Good afternoon to all of you. We are about to start the technical session 1B, the session on disaster preparedness. I am chairing this session. My name is Chaminda Bandara from University of Peradeniya. I think there were 6 presentations, but I think now today we have only 5 presenters here. So we will start from the first presenter in the list. It is development of legume-based disaster resilient emergency food product. The presenter is Ms. Ratnayaka H.A. From Food Science and Technology Department of University of Sri Jayawardenapura.
Hello everyone, I am H.A. Ratnayaka from the Department of Food Science and Technology, University of Sri Jayawardenapura. Our research study was regarding the development of a legume-based disaster-resilient emergency food product. Here is the overview of my presentation. According to WHO, a disaster is an occurrence of disrupting the normal conditions of existence and causing a level of suffering that exceeds the capacity of adjustment of the affected community. There is a higher possibility of food safety issues following disastrous situations, including outbreak of foodborne illnesses and nutritional deficiencies. Crowding, inadequate provider of unpolluted water, poor sanitary practices, and unhygienic conditions during food processing, storage, distribution, and consumption can lead to certain food safety issues such as diarrhea, cholera, typhoid fever, and hepatitis A. With the occurrence of a sudden disaster situation, certain group of the affected communities get isolated either within their dwelling premises or in disaster relief centers. In such conditions, the demand for highly nutritious, safe, and secure food products with higher storage stability get increased. So, in this kind of situation, maintaining an adequate storage of emergency food is an important part of disaster response preparedness. Simply, food items that are high in nutritional and calorie value that do not require refrigeration, water, or special preparation techniques are identified as emergency foods. Further, these food products should not be salty and should be properly packed in affordable sizes. Wien and Sabati have described a three-phase multidimensional approach for planning disaster response diets. Therein, they have scored 11 nutrient-dense food groups considering 4 major food selection criteria. And according to their study, plant-based food groups including dry cereals, nuts, dried fruits, grains, and legumes impart favorable qualities with respect to the 4 distinct disaster response diet planning criteria. Green gram. Green gram beans are considered as one of the cheapest and richest source of plant protein along with certain essential amino acids. Moreover, carbohydrates in green gram are easily digestible and it is a rich source of essential fatty acids. Due to the availability of numerous bioactive phytochemicals, it shows several functional properties including the high potential of antioxidant properties. Green gram is recommended as a weaning food for infants and highly nutritious dietary source for children due to its higher protein content, iron content, and hypoallergenic properties. Further, since green gram is a widely cultivated legume, it is easily accessible for all the personnel in social cross profile. According to several research studies in literature, different processing methods can contribute to reduce or eliminate anti-nutritional factors available in green gram beans. Generally, boiling is the most popular way of consuming green gram. However, it is a time-consuming process. Hence, the preparation of such food items can be problematic under calamitous situations. Therefore, the purpose of the current study was to develop sensorily acceptable rapid cooking green gram as an emergency disaster response diet for fulfilling the dietary requirements of the affected community. Now let's see how to prepare these rapid cooking green gram. Green grams were purchased from locally registered supermarket chains in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Then they were cleaned and subjected to 12 treatment combinations. The treatments include heat treatment, cold soaking, hot soaking with sodium bicarbonate, hot soaking without sodium bicarbonate, deep freezing and dehydrating. Then the best pre-treatment combination was selected based on the cooking time and texture profile analysis of the cooked grains. When considering the cooking time, it is the time required for cooking approximately 90% of the beans completely. Finally, the moisture content of well-dried green gram samples with acceptable cooking qualities was evaluated according to AOSC standard methods. According to the results, all the treated green gram samples used for the current study were boiled within 23 minutes without undergoing a pre-soaking step in cold water. Of these samples, sample number 8, that means the sample that undergone cold soaking, deep freezing and dehydrating, has the lowest cooking time of average 11.75 minutes. The control sample has taken the highest cooking time and had an uneven cooking quality characteristic showing a considerable amount of orally hard beans. According to the texture profile analysis, sample number 1 has the lowest hardness value, but that value do not show a significant difference to the hardness of the sample number 8. The adhesiveness of all the samples do not show significant difference from each other. Green gram sample number 8 has the highest stringiness value and sample number 7 has the highest cohesiveness value. Even though sample 3 and 11 has the lowest gumminess and sample 12 has the lowest chewiness, the gumminess and chewiness of sample number 8 do not show significant difference to those samples. So, this proves that the sample number 8, which has the lowest cooking time, also have better texture properties as well. According to the literature, grains with moisture content less than 13% sees the growth of most mites and molds, and the grains with less than 10% moisture content has a very low susceptibility for the development of insects and pests. Since the moisture content of rapid cooking green gram is around 8.06%, it has a higher shelf stability if it is packed in proper packaging materials with higher barrier properties and stored under proper storage conditions. Generally, in Sri Lanka market, 1 kilogram of raw green gram is around 200 Sri Lankan rupees. According to the estimate of selling cost of the rapid cooking green gram, 1 kilogram of rapid cooking green gram prepared from treatment combination 8 would be around 285 Sri Lankan rupees. However, due to the lower moisture content, the number of people to be served with 1 kilogram of rapid cooking green gram is higher than that of raw green gram. And since rapid cooking green gram does not contain any preservatives and artificial colorings, it is safe and suitable for all the personnel in social cross profile. Further, since the developed green gram can be rapidly cooked and can be consumed even with scraped coconut and or chili paste with or without adding salt, it is an ideal food for consuming as a major meal in disastrous situations. Finally, we can conclude from this study that green gram can be subjected to cold soaking followed by deep freezing and dehydration to convert them into rapid cooking form. The developed rapid cooking green gram has higher storage stability along with acceptable cooking qualities, which is a critical requirement during natural disasters. These are my references. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the Department of Food Science and Technology, University of Sri Javardhanapura for providing laboratory facilities, and thank you all for your kind cooperation.
Thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting presentation on emergency food. I think until we get some questions, maybe I will ask a very general question. Actually, I am not an expert in this area. Now, is this, I think your mic is muted, Heshani. Is this food can be prepared by, I mean, this process can be done by a normal, I mean, in a normal house, or is it to be prepared by someone else and sold for people?
Actually, this was initial plan for uh, prepare in industrial level and introduce this rapid cooking form to the community as an emergency food product. Actually, in household level, we can also prepare this, but this can be introduced as an emergency food product, and we can do this pre-treatment processes in industrial level and introduce as a pre rapid cooking product that can be cooked without soaking within and boiled within around 11 to 12 minutes.
Okay. So that means it is, I mean, it is a good option, like for various organizations that treat people at disasters, right? I think. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation.
Thank you very much, sir.
I think we go to the next presenter. I am requesting the audience to send your questions through the chat box because that will be very much appreciated if you can forward your questions. I will go to the next presenter. The topic of the presentation is analyze and comparison the atmospheric instability using K-index, lifted index, and convective availability, potential energy CAPE in development of thunderstorms in Sri Lanka. The paper ID is 028. The presenter is Mr. Fernando M. From Department of Meteorology.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to present the chapter named Analyze and Comparison of Atmospheric Instability Indices in Development of Thunderstorms in Sri Lanka during second winter monsoon. I am Alex Fernando, an author of this work. Mr. Malin and Mr. Premalal are the other authors of this. Let me go through the flow of this presentation. I will be basically talking about three major sections. At first, what is this study? And then how did we do this? And finally, what we could achieve. As you can see, this research is basically about analyzing and comparison of the atmospheric instability indices along with the thunderstorm development in Sri Lanka during second winter monsoon. Thunderstorm is a natural phenomenon that has been observed by humans from the beginning of times, which cause both good and bad consequences. Even now, thunderstorms diversely affect on many sectors, including marine, agriculture, etc. With advanced technology, somehow we can forecast thunderstorms, but it is still a challenging task. Conventional forecasting is a time-consuming work in forecasting thunderstorms, thus the lead time is lesser. Instability indices along with numerical weather predictions could do a better job here with a higher lead time forecasting thunderstorms. Instability indices have been widely used in the field of meteorology. These numerical values can help the forecaster to make better decisions. K-index, totals index, and lifted index are some of the widely used instability indices. Around 50 deaths are reported annually due to lightning strikes. March, April, October, and November are the peak months of thunderstorms, also called intermonsoons. These intermonsoons contribute around 50% of annual rainfall. Therefore, these seasons are very important for most of the people's livelihood. 3 data sources were used in this research. Those are global lightning data, also called GLD-360, from Finnish Meteorological Institute under the Severe Storm Warning Service for Sri Lanka project. NCEP FNL reanalysis data, ECMWF's ERA 5 data. Study period was 3 years second into monsoons. The number of strokes have been tabulated, as you can see in this table. As for the methodology, all the observations were plotted against the observed time of the strokes. Spatial maps of stroke percentiles were plotted. Reanalysis data were extracted with regards to the thunder observation time and location. Causes were searched for the relevant thunder activities using some of the parameters like winds and divergence. You can see some of the basic maps and graphs here. Histogram A is thunder occurrence time. As you can see, it's bell-shaped one with 9 to 13 UTC or 2:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. in Sri Lankan time. Peaks observed. Map B represent thunder percentiles. Two regions could be observed which have higher values. Those are Western Sapargama and Ua provinces. Map C is the average 10-meter winds over Sri Lanka during second intermonsoon. Its wind speed is much lesser. A wind convergence can be seen in western area and trough can be seen in Ua and eastern provinces, which are making favorable conditions for thunderstorms. It is generally accepted that Cape is a good indicator of thunderstorms. But here in these charts, A and B are for Cape and CIN. Both of them do not follow this widely accepted concept, which means many of these strokes have been observed during the minimum values of Cape and CIN. Graph C is representing K index. Most of the strokes have been concentrated to higher K index values. When we see the spatial distribution, the minimum number of K index values were observed over the hilly areas. Image D shows that. Image A is the lifted index of observed strokes. Most of the strokes have been concentrated to a higher instability indicating values. Image B is the spatial map of lifted index. Means more negative values represent more reddish color. Image C is the total totals index, again a better instability index with recommended instability region for a developing thunder showers. Image D is its spatial map. Again, the hilly areas has the lower values of total totals index values. Let us summarize the results. We could see a peak strokes time, wind converges, and a trough were observed. Seems like Cape and CIN are not much important in developing thunderstorms in Sri Lanka. K values were found to be around 25 to 39 for most of the strokes. Lifted index values were concentrated around -2 to -6. Total totals index values for most of the strokes were in between 39 to 47. With that, let's see the conclusion. Instability indices like K index, lifted index, and total totals index were found to be laid over the higher instability values for the strokes that have been observed during the study period, which means these are good instability indices to be considered when forecasting thunderstorms during second intermonsoon. The widely accepted Cape and CIN have no significant indication on developing thunderstorms over Sri Lanka. The highest chance to occur thunderstorms in Sri Lanka found to be around 2:30 to 6:30 p.m. during the second intermonsoon times. With that being said, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the again another interesting presentation. I think I will forward maybe one or two general questions to Mr. Fernando also. It is actually not really a question, but just to get some clarifications. Now, once we developed these indices, how can we can use these in the predictions? Is it possible to use in the predictions of vulnerability or the damage and all?
Yeah, that is a kind of approach here, particularly in forecasting. Of course, the damages and the effects, we really cannot forecast that. But the severity of the thunderstorms, it could be. It's just like this. Let's say now we have found that 3 of the particular indices performing well. I mean, those are in the accepted ranges in Sri Lanka. So usually we can obtain these numerical data for each day forecast. Let's say today we can have these forecasted values through the global models, so that we can compare what is the value of these particular indices. For an example, let's say today the K value is around 1000, K index value is around 20. Just like that, we can have these values and compare with this research. Then we can have an idea whether the rainfall or the thunderstorms are going to happen or not in first place, and then what could be the severity. We can have an idea like that.
Like that. The other question is now you have found certain areas in the country. I mean, kind of
Yeah,
the areas having a kind of peak effects.
yeah.
So how that
Yes.
can be integrated with this? I mean, in the predictions. So I mean, the meaning is like if the indices are high in those areas, means if there is an effect, those are the areas that can be more vulnerable.
It's something like this. Actually, with the observation, we could see some of the areas which are, of course, highly observed thunderstorms or the stroke numbers.
Okay.
But in the other hand, of course, like hilly areas, we could see the numbers are quite minimum, as well as the indices also indicate the same. Of course, if we include this thing in forecasting, we can create kind of an algorithm for we can improve the forecasting using this data, employing in an algorithm. So I have not done that, but of course we could do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I think you will continue this work that is actually directly related to your profession, right? You are from the Department of Meteorology.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I think I will then go to the third presentation. The third presentation, the title of the presentation is Developing a Framework for Disaster Risk Management, Integrated Transport Planning Process, Exploring the Key Components and Unit of Analysis. The paper ID is 152. The presenter is Mr. M. Senaviratna from the Global Disaster Resilience Center, University of Huddersfield.
A disaster can be identified as a sudden accident or a natural catastrophe that causes great damage or loss of life. From these events, which will disrupt the functioning of a community or society, prepare for response and learn from the effects of major failures can be considered as the main reliable way of staying safe. A very good day for all of you. I'm Malit Senaviratna, a second-year PhD researcher attached to the Global Disaster Resilience Center, University of Huddersfield, UK. In this presentation, I will be presenting a section of my proposed PhD research, which is about developing a framework for disaster risk management integrated transport planning process, exploring the key components and unit of analysis. The research is co-supervised by Professor Dilanthi Amratunga and Professor Richard Hai. The disasters in the world are growing in terms of its intensity and frequency, and the impact of such events on socio-economic environments have become inevitable due to the rapid growth of underlying risk drivers such as urbanization. Such devastations during the 2 decades until 2017 had caused an average annual cost of $314 billion on the physical infrastructure and had recorded a spike of 151% of cost to the overall economic activities. As given in the few examples of disaster events in the last 2 years, the damage becomes unpredictable unless we stay aware of the plausible impact, its trends, and potential cascading effects associated with the main event. Under this purview, the global agreements of disaster risk reduction and disaster risk management can be recognized as important agendas to protect cities and communities from potential disaster impacts and contribute to strengthen the resilience and sustainable development. Disaster risk management is the application of disaster risk reduction policies and strategies aiming to prevent emerging disaster risk, reducing existing disaster risk, and manage residual risk to strengthen the resilience for disasters. The early warning systems is an effective mechanism to support the activities identified in disaster risk management plans. Early warning system is identified as the set of capacities needed to generate and disseminate timely and meaningful warning information. The early warning system consists an integrated system of hazard monitoring, forecasting, and prediction together with the communication and preparedness activity system to enable the response capacity of relevant stakeholders to reduce disaster risk in advance of natural hazards. The response activities start as the disasters indicate to rise and lead the warning and evacuation appropriately before the disaster strikes. The phase extends towards post-disaster search and rescue, relief, and controlled safe environments. In this context, transportation is identified as a critical lifeline for several reasons. First, transportation system supports evacuation, emergency response, relief, and recovery operations. Second, the transportation system remains as the sole means of land access to the affected communities. Third, transportation infrastructure is highly prone to disasters, and many other infrastructure systems are depending upon the transportation system. Specifically, the early warning system can establish response and preparedness mechanisms for rapid onset environmental threats such as geological hazards, including earthquakes and tsunamis, and also hydrometeorological hazards, including floods and cyclones. These activities together have caused the maximum recorded damage to the socio-economic environments in the 2 decades until 2013. In this context, as emphasized in the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, the need to strengthen disaster risk management policies with the interest in building early warning systems and robust infrastructure is a critical area in any disaster-related research. Accordingly, the aim of this research is to develop a framework to integrate the specific transportation needs in tsunami risk management plans with the transport planning process for improving multi-hazard early warning and response. Since this research is focused on tsunami risk management, the tsunami risk will be assessed to identify the key components of the proposed framework. To assess the risk associated with tsunami events, the Juan Carlos model of risk assessment will be used as coping capacity during a disaster impact is a significant element of risk assessment. With reference to the tsunami events, the natural phenomena will be tsunami waves triggered following an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. According to the equation, hazard and exposure is considered as a mutual element of risk described in terms of criteria such as susceptibility, limitations, incapacities, or deficiencies. In this relation, deficiencies in preparedness refer to those pre-existing conditions which inhibit an institution, a community, or a country to respond in an effective fashion to minimize disaster impacts. Such deficiencies would include the lack of emergency committees and emergency plans, the lack of early warning systems, and related measures. Based on the risk assessment equation, a cause-effect content analysis was carried out to understand the propagation of influence and the concept flow over the assessment. After utilizing 30 codes identified in the relevant literature, the transportation demands and capacity needs have been recognized as the analytical unit from the risk assessment. It will be measured considering the spatial unit of Thyssen polygon defined for transportation junctions mentioned as knots. Accordingly, assessment parameters were defined for each criterion which can reflect the need of transportation during a tsunami response operation. The hazard will be evaluated based on the extent covered in each polygon by the level of extreme inundation and flow depth and speed at each polygon. The exposure and vulnerability will be evaluated based on social damage, which will include population density, GDP per capita, literacy, age, gender, and especially area covered due to pandemic isolation or population within an isolation area. Economic damage will include extents of residential, industrial, and agricultural areas. Environmental damage will include the extent of sensitive or hazardous areas, and physical damage will include buildings, road density, supply infrastructure density. And the deficiencies in preparedness will be evaluated based on extent not covered by tsunami early warning, sirens or signage, average proximity to vertical or horizontal evacuation, time and distance, demarcated evacuation routes, capacity and average congestion, accessibility and mobility based on centrality parameters, and workability based on space syntax assessment. Once the risk associated with nodes is assessed based on key transportation capacity needs during tsunami response operation, risk reduction measures can be proposed considering the elements in the identified risk equation. Those will be planning infrastructure and setbacks which will constrain or reduce the exposure to the hazard, or early warning and sufficient accessibility and mobility measures which will reduce the vulnerability in respect of the hazard, or alternative routes to redirect the ongoing traffic, walking paths connecting safe destinations, and clustering methods to ensure the safe evacuation during pandemic situations like COVID-19, which will improve the preparedness to anticipate and respond to the hazard. Accordingly, the proposed framework to integrate the specific transportation needs in tsunami risk management plans with the transport planning process for improving early warning and response can be illustrated with the mentioned key components. Mainly, the framework will consist of two sections. First, transport planning section, which overlooks the general transport planning process, including transport demand and supply management. Second, the risk management section, which is consisted of the risk assessment criteria, considering the transport demand and capacity needs during a tsunami response operation. Second, the risk management section, which is consisted of the risk assessment criteria, considering the transportation demand and capacity needs during a tsunami response operation. The principal measures, analytical measures, and local measures are prioritized based on the cost-effect content analysis, and the risk assessment is carried out considering demand for transport during response operations. The connectivity parameters in this assessment will enable a novel dimension of planning resilient transportation, evacuation, and smart connectivity. Since the framework proposes to integrate disaster preparedness in the national planning process as a long-term strategy, the countries like Sri Lanka, where the experience of tsunami is less frequent, can be considered as high importance. Apart from that, to identify the significant case study locations, considerable amount of urbanization over disaster-prone areas, high interdependency between transportation and disaster risk management, significant capacity needs in the existing transportation system, and need for multi-hazard early warning and response system will be studied. The planning attempts needs to study the interdependencies among infrastructure systems as a key factor for distinct protection and collective resilience. Understanding the transportation operations in the case of future climate or disaster events and how to mitigate the possibility of cascading failures affecting entire infrastructure systems is a vital decision. The functionality and efficiency of both transport planning and disaster risk reduction strategies can be further improved by incorporating the relevant interrelated aspects of both disciplines into a single framework. This will enable a resilience-led approach for the transport planning process, which is the key consideration in building robust infrastructure with adaptive and resilience capacities. As I mentioned in the start, being prepared to respond and learn from the effects of major failures can be considered as the main reliable way of staying safe from those failures. Therefore, it is all about our comprehension to know when it happens and live before it hits. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Seneviratna. Again, a very informative presentation. Also, I take a minute just to welcome one of the session chairs, actually, Dr. Nishan Sakalasurya is with me. Now, I think Dr. Nishan also will join with me to continue this session. Maybe I have one very general question again from you. That is, now this framework, is it? What I understood is it is not a country-specific one. It is a kind of a global framework that can be adapted to any country. Is it?
Yes, Dr. Panda, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the comments and the question. So basically, currently I'm going to evaluate it in the Sri Lankan context because now Sri Lanka, what we experience is we do not experience a tsunami very often. Therefore, like usually in Sri Lankan context, we tend to forget that they exist. Like only when it happens, we always do rapid changes in our planning regulations and do the adaptations. But as the time move on now, since 2004, we had a huge discussion, but now there is no discussion about tsunami at all. So that's why I'm planning to propose this framework to the countries like Sri Lanka, where the tsunami experience is not frequent, to make their national planning process, especially when it comes to infrastructure planning, be prepared in a long-term strategy, so that there will be no extra cost in tsunami preparedness or tsunami these funding allocations as in separate preparedness measures, but the national planning process will be prepared itself. So that's why I'm proposing this one to the countries like Sri Lanka, but of course it can be applied to other countries where it will not be, where the tsunami will not be the frequent case, but the countries like Indonesia, where the tsunami is frequent, of course they have to have another like comprehensive disaster tsunami management and mitigation preparedness systems, but they have to be like very comprehensive. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, what I'm proposing is that the national planning process can be prepared, and which is a gap in Sri Lankan context, where disaster management is not actually addressed in transportation planning, which has to be, and which can do a huge significant contribution to disaster management. So that's why I'm trying to link these two sections together in my research.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question now. I think now this study should also go in parallel with the transport planning process and the existing transport network, right?
Of course.
So with this framework, I mean, based on that, the existing transport network also should be modified and altered, isn't it?
Of course. So what I'm proposing is I'm going to do a basis of risk assessment, as I mentioned in my risk assessment section. So this risk assessment will be evaluated for the junctions of road network. So the risk levels of the junctions of nodes will be provided a basis for planning disaster management, as well as on the other hand transportation. So where the congestion is high, and where what are the segments of road network which are highly prone to disasters, as well as highly prone to congestion, are very likely to be congested. So those segments can be identified based on the risk assessment framework that I'm proposing. So once the junctions have been identified where the risk levels are high, they can be, of course, addressed with transport planning approach. And also, since I'm incorporating connectivity index into the disaster risk assessment process, which is kind of a new, because most of the disaster risk assessment frameworks do not consider this connectivity as aspect in their studies, which I consider as a very significant element, because however we plan to evacuate people in vulnerable locations, if they do not have a proper connectivity in terms of road network, their vulnerability will be higher on the other hand. So connectivity index is something that I'm proposing newly to the disaster risk assessment framework. And also, since now that I should say that it's been a while since this presentation is made. So now currently I'm a little bit focused on the evacuation during pandemic as well. So I'm proposing a concept of cluster evacuation, so that because currently what is suggested for the evacuation is the disaster evacuation should overrule the isolation rule. So there will be no isolation, like if there are any isolation policies in place, they will be will not be considered when it comes to disaster evacuation, which might create another cascading effect when it comes to post-disaster situation. So I'm trying to identify how cluster evacuations can be adapted into the situations like pandemic, COVID-19, so that the safety of evacuees can be ensured. Yes.
That's all from me. Dr. Nishan, do you have any questions from the author?
He's muted, I guess.
I'm joining from BMIC because I had technical mistakes, but now I can hear. But I missed the part of the presentation, and I will make some comments from the next presentation.
Thank you very much, technician.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
So
very
thank
much.
you very much. Okay, thank you. Then Dr. Nishan, I will introduce the next presenter.
Yes.
The next presentation is the title of the presentation is Rapid Response Mechanism for Major Disasters, Lessons Learned and Future Prospects. The paper ID is 58. The presenter is Mr. N. Alahakon from the International Water Management Institute.
Right.
I am so excited to present our abstract on the topic of rapid emergency response mechanism for the major disasters, lesson learned and future prospects today at the International Conference on Multi-Hazard and Early Warning and Disaster Risk Reduction. Emergency response mechanism we initiated in year 2013 with the objective of providing the near real-time response product to support government and non-government organizations to strengthen their relief and response activities. This mechanism basically involves 4 steps like activation of disaster charter, satellite data access procedure, product development and analysis, and the products disseminated to the end users. When we do this emergency response mapping, it is very much helpful to do the relief and response, post-disaster impact assessment, disaster risk assessment, designing of risk transfer solution like climate or index-based flood insurance, and to the rehabilitation and recovery process. Present the total mechanism where is involved during the emergency response. When the major disaster hits, the emergency observation request should be sent to the either International Disaster Charter or Sentinel Asia system by incorporating and with the discussion national and international agencies such as UN OSA, UN SPIDE as a regional support office at IMI, and mainly with the Disaster Management Center in Sri Lanka, we have the authority of doing disaster activities in Sri Lanka. When we have all agreed to activate the charter, we can send the emergency observation request to the corresponding charter, International Disaster Charter, Sentinel Asia system. Then it activate the charter. When it activate the charter, it will ask the data from the different data providers in the worldwide, especially with the European Space Agency, Canadian Space Agency, Japanese Space Agency, NASA, like so many globally available space agencies. Once this activation process completed, the charter will provide you the near real-time data of the disaster. The next step is to process this data and extract the flood inundation extent. When we extract this flood inundation extent,
We are basically incorporate them with the socioeconomic, agricultural, and infrastructure data to develop the useful value-added product. Once we prepare this value-added product, we are disseminating this through the international organization, national organization, and the government organization to complete their response and recovery activities. In Sri Lanka, from 2013 to 2020, we have done emergency response product development 7 years except 2014. Some years we activated the disaster charter. Some years we did not activate the disaster charter because the scale of the disaster is small. At such a scenario, we use the freely available data, as I mentioned in the previous slide, complete the emergency response. As you can see here, the flood events occurred 2016 and 17 are the major events happened in Sri Lanka. In 2017, to cover whole southern side and western side of Sri Lanka, we have completed the flood mapping, and we shared those maps as well as the raster information with the different government and non-government organizations to further analyze those data. Here you can see the very recent emergency response product developed by the IMI using the different satellite sensors data provided by the Disaster Charter and the Disaster Management Center to support the relief and rescue operation and the post-disaster risk assessment. Here you can see the work IMI has done during the dam break disaster occurred in Laupedia 2018. Here we use the charter provided satellite data as well as the freely available satellite data to understand how much surface water reduction in the reservoir and how much area was inundated by the water coming from the Breaks Dam, and how many people and how much of area on the cultivation was affected by this water. This is another example. We were intensively engaged with the emergency response product development during the super cyclone called Amphan, which was badly hit to India and Bangladesh. During that time period, we successfully developed more than 25 emergency response products to support disaster response and rescue operations. This is the final example I'm trying to provide you to represent a different geographical context we are working, like Afghanistan, where you can see the flooding is very rare in this region. But due to unexpected rainfall occurred in 29th August 2020, more than 80 people were died due to the flash flood occurred with mudslides. In such a scenarios, we don't have time to activate the disaster charter and waiting for the images. But by using publicly available satellite data, we were able to map the flood inundation and mudslide distribution path accurately in this area. Until now, I discussed about the emergency response mapping procedure and few examples, countries and region where we did these activities. Now I'm going to discuss with you about the challenges and further improvement we are expecting to do in near future. With the 8 years of experience in this field, still we are facing different problems when we are doing this emergency response mechanism. For example, when we go to the different countries, the secondary data access is very difficult. Also, according to the less knowledge on the disaster charter and their activation, it's take more time to activate the charter. Then it's delay the capturing the images. The other main problem is the handling of large amount of data which is provided by the disaster charter. When we activate the international disaster charter for one particular event, they are providing more than 50 GB of data in different resolution and different geographical extent. To handle this data is quite challenging. Also, to process this large amount of data, we need more capable people as well as more powerful processing capabilities. The other challenge we are facing is the data dissemination. Basically, for the data dissemination, we are sending by the email and we are providing the links with the data catalogs. But to overcome all these challenges, now what we are proposing is to do the cloud computing to reduce the processing time. Then we can improve the lead time of the product dissemination. The other thing is, instead of providing statistic on the static map, we can do the dynamic interface for the visualization and statistical analysis. Those are our future perspectives, and you can near future you can get those outputs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alahakon. Dr. Nishan, do you have any questions from our presenter?
Yes, Dr. Bandar, basically I have two questions. Actually, I have no clear idea about what was the methodology of this calculations and conclusions. The second one is to, if you can a little bit elaborate the reasons behind those challenges, because those challenges are very common in South Asian countries like Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka. For an example, the sharing data and all. So exactly, if you can tell with your experience, what are the reasons? Because as you said, the 8 years, you had a good experience. So I want to know that what are the reasons for those challenges, please.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation.
We cannot. Okay.
Yeah. Someone. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it is very
okay.
clear.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Actually, you were asking about two questions regarding the methodology, as well as you was asking about the challenges. Okay. If you
Actually, I'm asking the reasons for those challenges.
Yeah. I'm going to address those things. Yeah. Actually, we have worked with very different regions in the world, like as I mentioned, in the Afghanistan to South Africa to Lao PDR like countries. The major thing is, if you see Sri Lanka, we have a very good database on the our district boundary, provincial boundary, or Gram Niladhari division, or DSD boundary. Based on these boundaries, we can identify very clearly how much of people was affected or how much of flood inundation has happened on this area. But when you go to the country like Laopedia, they don't have this type of boundary. They have a very generic boundary system. Even we try to get with the government organization, they also don't have those information. The other challenges, what I mentioned, is as you know, the satellite data is very huge in size based on their spatial resolution. For example, when we activate the disaster charter for a one event, we are getting more than 50 GB of data with a different resolution in a different sensors like optical or whatever the sensor. The situation we are facing is when we have this much of data, the processing is taking time because emergency response we should not be doing after 3 days of the disaster or after 1 week of the disaster. If this incident happen, we have to do it very reasonable time period. Otherwise, it's a no use. For that respect, the problem is to processing the large amount of data. Okay, to do this one, actually, we have already implemented that process to doing them in a cloud-based system where we are not going to download the data into our personal computer system. We will do all the processing and computation in a cloud-based system. We download the data to the cloud system where the provided by the data from the different agencies, satellite agencies. Actually, for this type of situation, all the satellite agencies available in globally, they provide those data to us with a different license system. Okay, based on this one, we can process the data very quick time period, and with the interface, what I'm talking about, the visualization, we don't need to prepare the map what I have shown here. The user can move there and see the very high resolution, and they can zoom in, zoom out, and see. Also, when we link this one with the cloud processing and the Google Earth engine, everything, the system become more powerful. When we solve these challenges, the system become much more robust, and people can easily get those information in a, let's say, if the charter provide the data, let's say now, then we should be able to provide the value added product within next 20 to 30 minute time period. In the current situation, it's take around 2 to 3 hours, 4 to 5 hours sometimes. It's depending on the internet connectivity, all these facilities. Okay, that is our objective, and the challenges what I explained, they are related to that. If you have further, you can discuss actually.
Thank you, Alak, for the very informative and timely important presentation and the thoughts and sharing your experience. Yes, thank you, Dr. Chavin. Then it's your time. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alhakon. It was a very nice presentation. So may I introduce the last presenter? The last presenter today is the title of the presentation is Collective Action and Co-Management Initiatives in Bushfire Management, a case study of Belihulloya Mountain Range. The paper ID is 60. The presenter is Basnayaka BMRL. I think the presenter, Ms. Basnayaka, is from the Sabaragama University of Sri Lanka.
Hello everyone, I'm Rini Basnaik from Sabaragama University of Sri Lanka. Today I'm going to present on co-management initiatives in bushfire management, a case of Belihule mountain range in Sri Lanka. Belihule mountain is a very popular area as a tourist destination, and of course it's highly susceptible for bushfires annually. During August-September period, it's very common for the bushfire incidents, and most of these bushfire incidents are happening due to man-made causes. This figure is showing up the extent of the affected land areas and number of incidents during past 10 years in Beliholoya mountain range. And of course, we have identified that in every year, the people are just focusing on short-term measures like controlling the bushfires in particular area and providing daily necessities to the affected people. So in this study, we try to come up with a co-management mechanism. As the first step, we try to model in the bushfire risk by identifying the causes for bushfires and mapping the bushfire risk zones. Then we try to identify the impact of the socio-economic and environmental. Then we try to come up with the institutional analysis. So finally, we based on these three steps, finally we try to come up with the co-management mechanism to reduce the bushfires in this area. So our research objectives were to examine bushfire risk and investigate the social economic impact of bushfires, to develop map of the fire scales and fire risk zones in Belihule mountain area, and to develop co-management mechanism to mitigate the bushfires in Belihule mountain area. When we move to the methodology, our research locations were in Bulpe and Haldamulla divisional secretariats. They are located in Ratnapura and Badulla districts. Actually, the study has conducted a twofold approach, institutional analysis and the field survey. Institutional analysis used to identify the role and responsibilities of institutions, and the field survey has conducted to get an idea about the affected community. We have used self-administrated questionnaires, focus group discussions, in-depth interviews, and field observations to collect primary data. And we develop social map, Venn diagrams, institutional metrics, seasonal analysis charts by using Microsoft Excel and ArcGIS software. Another results and discussion. So first we try to identify the impact of the socio-economic and environmental. In the Belihule mountain area, majority of the people are engaging in tea cultivation. Other than that, paddy cultivation, tomato and beans cultivation also we can see here. So we have developed a seasonal land management calendar. You can see in this figure. So in here you can see the time period which is happening, the bushfires, tourist camping, and the agricultural practices peaking time, and how about those are overlapping in each time level. So in this study, we have identified the causes for the bushfires as setting fires for agricultural purposes, hunting, setting campfires by tourists, careless fire handling like just throwing cigarette butts or the matchsticks to the forest, and man-made fires to divert the attention of officers from illegal gem mining and drug dealing. So then we, in our focus group discussions, by discussing with the affected communities, they have said that the loss in indigenous wildlife habits, loss in valuable timber resources, reducing forest covers, and creating unhealthy living conditions due to the higher smoke and generated ash in fires, and of course lacking drinking water are the major impacts that they are suffering from these bushfire incidents. And when we talk about their income level, of course more than 90% of our sample are categorized under the poor category, And of the study location, we have identified that 0.5 to 5 acres of average tea lands are annually exposed for these bushfire incidents. So the estimated economic loss was 100 to 500 USD dollars. And then we try to identify the institutions who are involving in the managing bushfires. In there, I have identified that each institutions are located in village level, divisional secretariat level, district level, national level, provincial level, and national level, as shown in this figure. So when we talk about their involvement, so the majority of the people, the institutions are involving in the preparing action plans, conducting disaster management meeting, and of course, significant involvement we can see in the educating the people and awareing the people on bushfires. When we talk about the institutional involvement from the affected community side, so in the community level, they have their labor unions or the farmer organizations who are involving in the managing bushfires. Simply, they are informing to the nearest police station or the army camp when there is a bushfire incident occurred. And the tea state laborers, they are simply informing to their immediate managers. So the police station, divisional secretariat, and the environmental conservation authorities are then taking actions to mitigate the bushfires. So in the interinstitutional relationship, we can see when the people have informed to the police station or to the tea factory or the army camp, then they are involving in managing bushfires. And when the people have informed to the divisional field officers, so they are simply informing to the wildlife conservation office, divisional secretariat, divisional forest officers to manage the bushfire incidents. Under the second objectives, we have developed a map on fire scares and fire risk zones mentioning in the Belihule mountain area. So in the detailed map, it's showing up the risk zones of the fire and the buffer zones, and of course what are the institutions which are located in nearest areas and their agricultural practices, the forest area which is located in Belihule mountain area. Under the third objective, we try to develop co-management mechanism. In here, we have identified that building and strengthening the community organizations which are already implemented within the community is very essential. And of course, providing scientific involvement in developing bushfire management and educating people from the school level is also a very essential step to mitigate the bushfires. And then the maintaining past records and involving ICT to share the information with the relevant authorities and the interested parties to facilitate the mitigate measures is another essential strategy. And as practicing in other developed countries, implementing fire danger rating system is also essential here. Based on the GPS locations and drones images, we can create the fire danger rating system to predict the next forest or grassland fires. So finally, we can conclude that this Belihule mountain range is home for large flora and fauna, and it's highly susceptible for the bushfire during August-September period. Of course, the people are more suffering socio-economic and environmental impacts due to these bushfires, such as including destruction of biodiversity, extinction of flora and fauna, lacking drinking water, reducing the forest covers. And we have identified that the institutional landscape of disaster management comprises the government, NGO, and private institutions, but they are poorly attending on towards the natural disaster management, and there is a hidden but critical social impact has been caused by bushfires annually. So the fire risk maps that we have developed showed that the potential risk areas and locations of households of the adjacent communities and established institutions. So they establish and empower community level organization in high risk area, and delegation of power and decision making authority is recognized as one of the key strategic involvement. Further, implementation of the fire danger rating system using GIS was identified as a positive strategy in this study, and co-management mechanism would help to develop sustainable solution to bushfires in Ballyhullo mountain range. So these are my references, and thank you for your kind listening.
Thank you, Ms. Basnaik. Again, we had a very informative, interesting presentation. Dr. Nishan, if you have any questions.
Okay, you go first. I will ask second, please.
Thank you. Ms. Basnaik, I have actually two questions. The first one is, I think you talked about the resistance of people living around the region. Now, as I heard, the people who are residing there are kind of poor people. My question is, are not them the one, the ones who does that? Because the fire is man-made. Is it not by themselves that is happening?
Yeah.
And the second question is about the legal framework. Maybe in your study, maybe you have studied about the present legal situation. I mean, to tackle this and to punish whoever is doing this. How strong it is. So those are those two questions that I like to ask.
Thank you, sir. I hope you can hear me. Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, of course, the most of as I mentioned, the tea state workers, the villagers who are living around that the mountain range area, of course, they are most of them are responsible for those for annual fires, because in every year, in every the August September period, this fire is happening. But that is actually in past the 10 years back, they have do it as a practice to get fresh grasses to their cows. That was happened, but now it's actually with the involvement of the disaster management officers and the forest officers, now it has control. The other mainly issue is the tourist, the people who this mountain range is very famous for camping, and it's very famous with among the local and the global tourists, and especially the university students. So they are just coming and doing the camping and setting fires, and they just not just to finish off all the things, but they just going away from there, but the fire is happening. Normally the last years also this the fire was happened, that is because of the campfire. When we talk about the legal framework, of course now it most of the government authorities has keep eye on that. Now the some of the area of this mountain range has closed for the tourists or for the visitors for camping. And of course they are when they catch the people who has involved for these the bushfires, so they have authority to impose fine or impose in jail, but actually it's not happening. Most of the time the villagers have catch up those people, and they just give to the police stations, but anyhow they just by paying that fine they are going away. But what do you call the strict framework is not there, strict regulations, strict regulations and rules are not there. Actually, it's not still happening.
Thank you, Dr. Nishan.
Thank you, Dr. Bannard. Then thank you, Ms. Basnaik, and you did a very excellent and informative presentation. I'm very much happy because I have some experience on a particular region. As you said, the also are very true. Yeah, but I want to know that did you do a factor analysis on that?
No, sir. Actually, this is basically the research is going as a
Yeah,
qualitative
that's why,
one.
because the this is the all these things focus on exactly who are the responsible parties, and if we, then we can decide
Yeah.
what we can do, right? And that's why I called it then.
Yeah, the thing, yeah. The thing is, when we are interviewing with the institution, they are just saying the villagers are the responsible. They are the people
Yes.
who do it. When we talk about with the villagers, they are saying the visitors and all. But the main reason that we have found in this research, the people they set fires to pay the attention of the officers, and they are doing the illegal gem mining and illegal drug dealing there. That is the main reason now. Behind the scene,
Yeah.
I have found that
That's why.
yeah, the other researchers who has done based on this the bushfire, they didn't found it, but recently that is the main cause
Yes,
for that.
and I would like to suggest the next time we have to improve with the factor analysis, and then Dr. Bandar, I think he tried to mention another aspect of your presentation, but as a geographer, I would like to use the political ecology, the
Okay.
approach to study, right? Because it's a
Mm-hmm.
new approach, because sometimes we are making the wrong conclusions because the villages are the responsible, right? Exactly, in my experience in Sri Lanka, the residents or the settlers of the nearby areas are not the responsible parties, and sometimes the outsiders are the responsible. But basically, even in the not only the bushfire but also the landslides and floods, right? The victims are not the responsible most of the time, right? That's why I mean political ecology approach is very important. I think, are you in the Department of Geography?
Department of Agribusiness Management.
That's why. Yeah, I was in the GISM. I'm very much happy. But I think Dr. Bandara also mentioned that point. I think the political ecological approach is very much important to find the exact responsible party where they are living, right? Okay, those
Yeah,
are
thank you,
so
sir.
thank
Thank
you,
you very much.
Basmat. I
Thank you so
congratulate
much.
anytime you would be success, because we are coming to make a success presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Manda.
Thank you again, Ms. Basnaik. I think now those are the 5 presentations we had today. If I little summarize them, first we had a presentation on food for emergencies by Ms. Ratnayaka, and then we had a very interesting presentation on thunderstorms, the atmospheric instability, and kind of making an index to identify some of the effects by Mr. Fernando, and then we had the transportation infrastructure framework that is in the process of developing by Mr. Seneviratna, and then we had this rapid response mechanism for major disasters, especially the water disasters by Mr. Alahakon, and then Ms. Basnaika's presentation on this bushfire management in the Sabaragamuwa area. So I think we had very informative and very interesting presentations, both related to DRR. So I think with that we can conclude the session. Dr. Nishan, if you want to also add something.
Affecting you was there from beginning to end, because I had some technical failures. I'm joining from the BMICH because I came for the inaugural ceremony, but we had some technical errors here. So anyway, I think I agreed totally with you, sir. And then basically we have to encourage those researchers in the disaster management field too, because we are in the second most vulnerable country in the world. So this we need the very much higher contribution, the scientific contribution to overcome those challenges in Sri Lanka. Yes, I wish you all the best, new presenters and the researchers, and especially Dr. Banda that's introducing me. And you started on time. If not, I was in hell because just I'm sorry connected again. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the participants. I think we can hand over the session now to our coordinators